She left me when I lost everything. Years later, I built an empire from nothing, and now she wants back in. She doesn't know the man she abandoned no longer exists, and my answer will change everything. Please like this video and subscribe to my channel, thank you. My name is Daniel Harris. I'm 32 years old, and up until a few years ago, I thought I had life figured out. I wasn't rich, but I had enough. A steady job, a modest house, and a wife I thought was my partner for life. Claire and I had been together for 6 years, married for 4, and we had that comfortable rhythm you get when you think you're building a future together. That's why I didn't see it coming. It was a Tuesday morning, one of those mornings where the sky is a dull, pale gray, like it hasn't decided whether to rain or just hang heavy over you. I remember the way the air felt in my lungs as I walked into my boss's office. It was supposed to be a regular check-in meeting. But the look on his face. It was the kind of look that tells you everything before a single word is spoken. The conversation lasted barely 5 minutes. Downsizing, company restructuring, it's nothing personal. The words didn't even feel real. I'd given that company 8 years of my life, stayed late when no one else would, skipped vacations, covered for other people's mistakes, and in the end, I was just another name on a list. I walked out holding a plain white envelope with my severance pay inside, and it felt like my whole identity was stuffed into it. I can still remember how cold the hallway felt, like the air conditioning had been turned up just to mock me. On the drive home, I kept telling myself Claire would understand. She always said we were a team. I imagined her saying we'd figure it out together. But when I walked through the front door, I didn't find comfort, I found something else entirely. Her expression wasn't shock or concern. It was disappointment. Maybe even disgust. She asked a few polite questions, but I could hear the detachment in her voice. She didn't hug me. She didn't say we'd get through it. She just went quiet. That night, while I sat on the couch trying to plan my next move, she was in the bedroom packing a bag. I didn't realize it until I heard the zipper. She walked out carrying that suitcase, her eyes fixed anywhere but on mine. She said she couldn't live like this, like the uncertainty of my job loss was some kind of contagious disease. And just like that, she was gone. No fight. No second chance. No hesitation. The sound of the front door closing was louder than any slam I'd ever heard. I just sat there in the dim light, staring at the space she'd left behind. The closet door was open, half the clothes gone, a few empty hangers swaying slightly. I think that's when it hit me. In less than 24 hours, I'd lost my career and the person I thought would never leave my side. And for the first time in years, the house felt like a stranger's home. The days after Claire left felt like falling down an endless staircase in slow motion, each step hitting harder than the last, but never quite reaching the bottom. At first, I told myself it was just a bad week. That I'd land another job quickly, call her, and we'd laugh about how we overreacted. But that call never came, and the weeks started blurring together in shades of gray. Mornings were the worst. I'd wake up and for a second, I'd forget everything had changed. The bed would still feel warm, and I'd expect to hear the sound of Claire making coffee in the kitchen. But then the silence would hit me, a silence so heavy it felt like it was pressing down on my chest. I applied for every job I could find. Some days, I sent out 20 applications. Most never got a reply. The few that did were polite rejections, usually saying they'd decided to move forward with other candidates. I started to wonder if I'd somehow become invisible. Money was disappearing faster than I could replace it. I sold my car to cover the mortgage. I canceled the internet and used free Wi-Fi at a coffee shop down the street. I even started skipping meals, not because I was trying to save money, but because I just wasn't hungry anymore. Hunger felt smaller than the ache in my chest. Friends reached out at first, asking if I was okay, if I needed anything. But pride is a strange thing, it makes you say, "I'm fine," when you're barely hanging on. Eventually, the calls slowed down. People stopped inviting me out. I can't blame them. Misery isn't a fun dinner guest. The house began to feel haunted, but not by ghosts, by memories. The dent in the couch cushion where Claire used to sit. The faint smell of her perfume that still lingered on the pillow. The kitchen cabinet that she always left slightly open, no matter how many times I told her to close it. Little things that once felt like life now just reminded me of loss. And the worst part? Night. At night, the silence wasn't just in the room, it was in my head. I'd lie there staring at the ceiling, replaying every decision I'd made, wondering if there was a moment I could have changed to stop all of this. The guilt, the shame, the feeling of being unwanted, they all piled on until I couldn't tell which was heavier. I started to believe this was it, that my life had peaked and I was now just existing, waiting for whatever came next. But deep down, a tiny voice kept whispering that this couldn't be the end. I didn't know it yet, but that voice would be the one thing that saved me. It started on one of those mornings where I couldn't decide whether to get out of bed or just let the day pass without me. My phone battery was nearly dead, the fridge had nothing but half a jar of peanut butter, and my bank account balance had dipped so low it looked like a cruel joke. I needed Wi-Fi to check job postings, so I dragged myself to the little cafe down the street. It wasn't fancy, mismatched chairs, chipped mugs, the faint smell of burnt toast always hanging in the air, but it had two things I needed: internet and a corner where I could hide from the world. As I stirred my cheap black coffee, my eyes wandered to the community board near the counter. It was cluttered with flyers, dog walking, guitar lessons, yoga classes, but one caught my attention. In bold letters, it read, "Free seminar, start your own online business." I almost laughed. I didn't even have enough money for groceries, let alone to start a business. But for some reason, I didn't throw the flyer away. I stuffed it in my pocket, figuring it was better than scrolling through another list of jobs I wouldn't get. The seminar was in the back room of a local library. No stage, no big screen, just a guy with a laptop and a projector. His name was Mark, and he wasn't some millionaire with flashy cars or fake Instagram followers. He was just normal. But he spoke about e-commerce like it was a lifeline, a way to break out of the grind. He talked about finding a niche, selling online without holding inventory, using social media to drive traffic. I didn't understand half of it at the time, but what I did understand lit a fire in me. For the first time in months, I felt like maybe, just maybe, there was another way to climb out of this hole. After the seminar, I didn't go home. I went straight to the library computer lab. I typed "how to start an online business" into the search bar and fell into a rabbit hole of articles, YouTube tutorials, and blog posts. That night, I stayed up until 3 a.m. taking notes, watching videos, and reading forums. I didn't have the money for a fancy course, so I made my own. My notebook quickly filled with messy diagrams, lists of ideas, and potential product niches. Something had shifted. I didn't know if it would work, but for the first time in months, I wasn't just reacting to life, I was trying to steer it. The spark was there, but sparks alone don't start fires. You need fuel. You need air. And, in my case, you needed the last $200 sitting in your bank account. I had decided on my niche, fitness gear. It made sense. I'd been into fitness for years before my life went sideways, and I understood what people looked for in quality equipment. Resistance bands, workout gloves, portable dumbbells, simple products, but ones I knew I could talk about with passion. Setting up the online store was the easy part. I found a cheap hosting plan, bought a basic theme, and spent hours customizing it until it looked halfway professional. I even learned how to write product descriptions that didn't sound like they were copied from some generic catalog. The real challenge was traffic, getting people to actually visit the store. I tried running Facebook ads. I set a budget so low, the platform probably laughed at me. I joined fitness forums, created Instagram posts with motivational quotes, even messaged a few small fitness influencers offering them free products in exchange for a shout-out. For the first week, I was obsessed. Every time my phone buzzed, my heart jumped, thinking it was a sale notification. Most of the time, it wasn't. And the few times it was, well, it was just someone adding items to their cart and then abandoning them. I remember sitting at my desk late one night, staring at the analytics dashboard. Flatline. No spikes, no bursts of activity, just a steady, depressing trickle of visitors. I'd refresh the page every few minutes as if sheer willpower could make someone buy something. By the end of the month, my $200 was gone. The store hadn't even covered its own expenses. I'd failed. And it hurt, not just because I lost the money, but because I'd let myself believe I was finally crawling out of the pit, only to trip and fall face-first back into it. But here's the thing about failure: if you sit with it long enough, it starts to talk to you. It tells you what you did wrong. It points out the shortcuts you took, the mistakes you didn't see. And that night, failure spoke loud and clear. I had been chasing quick wins instead of building something solid. So I made a choice. I wasn't quitting. The store was going to get a complete overhaul. This time, no shortcuts. No blind spending. I was going to learn the game, really learn it, and play it like my life depended on it. Because, in many ways, it did. I wish I could say my second attempt was an overnight success, but it wasn't. It was weeks of trial and error, late nights hunched over my laptop, and more coffee than I cared to admit. I shut down my first store completely and started fresh. Same niche, fitness gear, but this time, I treated it like a real business. I researched my competitors, studied what they did right, and more importantly, what they did wrong. I read customer reviews on their products to find out what people actually wanted. Instead of throwing money at random ads, I built my store around storytelling. Each product had a backstory. It wasn't just a resistance band, it was the thing that could help you work out anywhere, even if your life was chaotic. I spoke to my customers like they were friends, not transactions. Sales were still slow at first, a couple here, a couple there. But the difference this time was consistency. Every day, I posted valuable content, workout tips, short videos, relatable memes. People started following me not just for the products but for the personality behind them. And then it happened. One of my posts, a simple 2-minute video showing creative ways to work out with my resistance bands, went viral. It wasn't polished, it wasn't scripted, but it was real. People shared it like crazy, tagging their friends, asking where they could get the band. In the span of 48 hours, my store made more sales than it had in the past 2 months combined. I remember refreshing my dashboard and seeing the orders pile up, each notification a small explosion of hope. I worked nonstop that week, packing orders, answering customer questions, restocking inventory. I was exhausted, but it was the kind of exhaustion that comes with purpose. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I was building something that could last. It wasn't just the money. It was the proof that I wasn't a failure, that I could create something out of nothing. By the end of the month, I had doubled my revenue. It still wasn't enough to call myself rich, but it was enough to know I was onto something real. And deep down, a thought started forming, a dangerous thought: if I can do this once, I can do it bigger. Momentum is a strange thing. At first, it feels impossible to get moving, like pushing a stalled car uphill. But once it starts rolling, it's almost harder to stop than it was to start. After that viral post, I realized something important: attention was currency. If I could capture it and keep it, sales would follow. So, I turned my small fitness store into a brand. I invested every spare dollar into better product photography, cleaner packaging, and faster shipping. I redesigned the website to look like something you'd trust with your credit card. I added customer reviews right on the homepage because nothing sells a product like someone else's honest enthusiasm. Within months, I launched 2 new online stores in related niches: home workout accessories and wellness supplement. The systems I had built for one store worked for all 3. And since my content was already gaining traction, I could cross-promote between them without spending much more on ad. Orders came in faster than I could keep up. I hired a virtual assistant to handle customer service and a freelance designer to help with marketing materials. Suddenly, I wasn't just a guy trying to survive, I was a business owner with a team. By the end of my second year in business, my revenue was 5 times higher than my old corporate salary. I moved out of the cramped apartment I'd been living in and bought a sleek, modern penthouse with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. It wasn't about showing off, it was about standing in a place I never thought I'd reach and knowing I'd built it with my own hand. There were still challenges, inventory issues, supplier delays, the constant pressure to innovate, but I learned to handle them like a game of chess. I was no longer reacting to problems, I was anticipating them. And then, the unexpected started happening. Local business magazines reached out for interviews. A podcast invited me to talk about entrepreneurship. I even got a message from a university professor asking if I'd guest lecture in a business class. The man who once couldn't get an employer to reply to an application was now being asked for his advice. But even in the middle of all this growth, I carried a silent memory with me: the night Claire left, the sound of the suitcase zipper, the cold look in her eyes. I didn't dwell on it, but it was there, tucked away like a scar you can't see unless you know where to look. That memory was about to come back in a way I never expected. It was a late Friday afternoon, the kind where the golden sunlight spills through the windows and makes everything look warmer than it really is. I had just wrapped up a video meeting with my marketing team when my phone lit up with a number I didn't recognize. Normally, I wouldn't have answered. Unknown numbers usually meant spam calls or someone trying to sell me something I didn't need. But for some reason, maybe out of habit, maybe out of boredom, I picked up. And then I heard it. Her voice. For a moment, my mind couldn't catch up with what my ears were telling me. It had been almost 3 years since I'd last heard Claire speak. I had imagined this moment before, how I'd feel, what I'd say, but the reality hit different. She said she'd been thinking about us, about how we had something special. She told me she had been following my success online, that she was proud of me, that maybe we could talk. On the surface, her words were warm. But underneath, I could hear the calculation. The careful way she framed things. The way she never actually apologized for leaving, just sidestepped it, like it was an inconvenient detail. As she talked, my eyes wandered across my apartment, the city skyline through the window, the polished hardwood floors, the neatly organized desk where I'd built my business from scratch. All of it had been created without her, in the very absence she'd left behind. She asked if we could meet in person. And before I even realized what I was doing, I said yes. Not because I wanted her back, that ship had sailed the night she walked out. But because I needed to look her in the eye to see if she was the same person. Or if time had changed her the way it had changed me. When I hung up, I sat there for a long time in the quiet. My chest wasn't tight. My hands weren't shaking. The old me would have been flooded with anger or longing. But now it felt like I was about to meet a stranger wearing a familiar face. We agreed to meet at a coffee shop downtown, one of those trendy places with exposed brick walls, warm lighting, and the constant hum of people tapping away on laptop. I arrived early, not because I was eager, but because I wanted a moment to settle myself before she walked in. When Claire entered, it was almost surreal. She looked exactly the same, yet entirely different. Same honey brown hair, same confident posture, but there was something in her eyes now. A sharpness. Or maybe it was a hunger. She smiled like nothing had ever happened. Like she hadn't walked out of my life without looking back. She sat down across from me, and for a moment I just studied her, wondering how many rehearsals it took for her to perfect that warm, casual tone. She started talking about the good old days. Our vacations. The little inside jokes we used to share. She even brought up the tiny restaurant we used to go to on Friday nights, as if nostalgia could erase the fact that she'd left me at my lowest. Then, as casually as if she were asking about the weather, she started weaving in questions about my life now. How was business? How many employees did I have? Was I traveling much? Where was I living these days? It was subtle, but I could hear the subtext in every question. She wasn't curious, she was calculating. Taking inventory. Measuring what she'd walked away from and deciding if it was worth coming back for. I let her talk. I didn't interrupt. I wanted to hear it all. She spoke about how life had been hard for her too, though the way she said it made me doubt her struggles had been anywhere near mine. She hinted that maybe walking away was a mistake. I kept my expression neutral, but inside, a quiet truth was settling in. The person sitting across from me wasn't the partner I once thought I had. She wasn't coming back because she missed me. She was coming back because my life now looked comfortable, and she wanted a seat at the table she hadn't helped set. When she finally asked if I'd thought about giving us another chance, I didn't answer right away. I just sipped my coffee and let the silence stretch between us. I could see a flicker of uncertainty in her eyes. Maybe for the first time that afternoon, she realized this conversation wasn't going the way she'd imagined. I set my coffee cup down slowly, the sound of ceramic meeting wood louder than I expected. For a second I just looked at her, and I swear it was like I could see two Claires at once, the woman I once loved, and the woman who had left me without hesitation. I thought about that night. The coldness in her voice. The way she zipped her suitcase without looking at me. The sound of the front door clicking shut. The echo of her absence in every corner of my life afterward. She was still waiting for me to say something. And for a moment I could tell she thought my pause meant I was considering it, that maybe, deep down, I still wanted her. But the truth was, I didn't. I told her, calmly, without raising my voice, that the man she had left behind no longer existed. That the version of me who needed her approval, her comfort, her presence to feel whole. He was gone. I said that I didn't rebuild my life to hand it back to someone who had walked away when things got hard. That I didn't create my success to share it with someone who hadn't been there in the struggle. Her smile cracked just a little. She tried to say I was being cold, that I was letting pride get in the way. But I wasn't angry. I wasn't bitter. I was just done. I told her I wished her well. Truly. But I wasn't interested in revisiting the past. I had fought too hard to build a future that wasn't tied to her. For the first time in the entire conversation, she didn't have a quick comeback. She just sat there, staring at me, as if she couldn't quite believe I wasn't playing the role she'd expected. I stood up, thanked her for meeting me, and left. The cool evening air hit my face, and with it came a strange, light feeling. Not relief exactly, more like release. The weight I'd been carrying for years had finally slipped off my shoulders. I didn't look back to see if she was watching me leave. Walking away from that coffee shop, I realized something I wish I had known years ago, that sometimes the most powerful thing you can say is no. It wasn't just no to Claire. It was no to the version of myself that thought love meant holding on, no matter how much it hurt. It was no to the belief that my worth was tied to someone else's approval. The truth is, losing my job and my marriage felt like the end of everything. But now I can see it was just the end of a chapter one was never meant to stay in. If Claire had stayed, maybe I would have played it safe forever. Maybe I would have settled for comfortable instead of fighting for something extraordinary. Rebuilding from nothing wasn't glamorous. It was lonely, exhausting, and terrifying. But it forced me to dig deeper than I ever had. It showed me that I could create my own stability, my own joy, my own empire, without needing anyone to hand it to me. And here's the thing, when you climb your way out of the hole, you stop inviting people who helped dig it to come celebrate at the top. Success doesn't erase betrayal. Forgiveness doesn't mean reunion. These days, I live life on my terms. My business continues to grow, I travel when I want, I wake up excited to work, and I surround myself only with people who show up in the storm, not just the sunshine. Claire is part of my past. A lesson, not a regret. And the best part? The chapter after she left was the one where I became the person I was always meant to be. Sometimes, the greatest revenge isn't proving someone wrong with words, it's living a life so full, so unapologetically yours, that they have to watch from the outside. And that's exactly what I'm doing. Please like this video and subscribe to my channel, thank you.